so we still have a couple minutes. How's everyone doing today?
Awesome.
Yeah, first day of online, having fun? All right. How many of you have made a fursuit badge before? Just a couple of you. How many of you have purchased a fursuit badge from someone else? Yeah. So fursuit badges, they're really easy to overthink. They're super simple, and we're going to go over the process of how to make them today, and just a couple little tips and tricks to make sure that you're producing the best quality stuff you can. Come on in, everyone, find a seat. Alright, so while you're all here today, we're going to be going over the necessary materials and where you can find them. The process of building a badge, the different kinds of badges, extra tips and tricks to make them as awesome as possible, and then we'll have a question time at the end. A little bit about me. I am Laura. I'm hosting this panel, as you can see. I am from the state of Washington. I've been here my whole life, and I've been a part of Furry Fandom for the last 12 years almost. And after over a decade of illustration, I'm finally confident enough in my badge work to be sharing with all of you how to make them. Just in 2023 alone, I made over 75 fursuit badges, and in the last 5 years, I have produced 350. And here's just a couple of the ones I've made.
That's more than a couple.
Welcome in, welcome in. You can find a seat.
Is this the one that starts at 2:30?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And confinement.
Okay, how about that?
Do you see any other chairs? And then two meeting desks.
Alright, everyone sit down. We're going to go over some of the basic materials. So, for the majority of badges, there are two types. There are traditionally drawn badges and digital badges. Digital badges are probably one of the most easy ones for everyone to do because all you need is an electronic device and a printer. Whereas with traditional badges, you're going to need paper, markers, erasers, and all sorts of things. I'm going to be going over both kinds for you so that you have an idea how to make both. There's only a few differences with traditional versus digital to make them, and then when you're building the badge, it'll be the same process primarily. Pretty much all of the supplies you need will be able to be found in your local grocery stores, office supplies, or like a school retailer if you have anything near you. A lot of items can be found on Amazon or online stores. Specific things like a light box. This is something you don't need, but it will really make your life easier if you're doing a lot of these. A light box is especially helpful if you're doing a lot of commissions at once. You can sketch it out, transfer paper, and then you're completing that badge on a spare piece of paper. So if you're mailing them out, if anything happens, it's lost. You don't have to start entirely from scratch. You can go back and do your line art again, and then your process is pretty much ready to go. So to start your badge, traditional is the most common way badges are built, so I'm going to be going over the basics of these to start. So you're going to grab your sketchbook and your pencil, and you're going to doodle your favorite little things, whatever you feel like doing. Then, using a light box or the window, you're going to trace each line to the new paper. This is going to make a cleaner thing. You're not going to have any of that leftover graphite from your pencils left on there. You're just going to go straight to your line art, looking through the light to see where to put your marker. And then if you're doing line art with like a Sharpie or anything, you'll want to give it at least 24 hours to dry before you go into color anything else. This will avoid any like smears or things, especially if you're using wet medium like watercolor paints, acrylic paints, or alcohol markers. Especially if you use water-based markers, those are going to smear a lot. And then once your 24 hours is up, you can color and finalize, add all your fun little details. With digital badges, you're just gonna go to town, you draw your favorite little thing, and then when you're ready, before you print a digital badge, you want to make sure to translate, you want it to be at least 20% translucent, because whenever you print anything, it is going to be so dark that you will not be able to see all of those details you're wanting. I have this Cosmo Tiger badge, and this tiger has some pretty dark purples on here. Had I not diluted it by at least 20%, it would come off black instead of purple. So that's just one thing to look for when you're doing your digital badges. And then once we have our artwork ready to go, we are going to start assembling our badge. This is the fun part where it really starts to look like a badge. So you're gonna cut it out from the art itself. You're going to go all the way around, leaving a little white rim just to get that little pop of color. It'll draw people's eyes closer to it. You want to try and get this as even as you can. It's okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. Depending on what kind of art style you're doing, you might want to give like some sharper edges, or you'll try and round them off, make it extra cute. Lots of little things to help your style kind of show through, even when it's not something you've drawn. Once your art is all cut out, ready to go, you're gonna find a complementary color. Lots of details on that other places. But you'll pick a color that will really go with your badge, the character, etc. And then you'll glue your art to that piece of paper. You can use wet glue, glue stick, whatever you'd like. But while the glue is drying, you're going to want to set it on a table with a book. That way it is staying nice and flat. Because sometimes it'll try and curl up, and we do not want curly badges. Now that our cardstock is connected to our art, we can cut the cardstock following the same perimeters as the white edging. And then from there, we are good to start our lamination process. But before you laminate, always, always, always sign your artwork, please. Especially if you're starting a business, you want to put at least somewhere for other people to find you. And then if your commissioner ever loses their badge, the con goers will scan the QR code on the back or whatever contact, even if you just write it down, they'll be able to find you and get that badge back to your clients. This is also a time where you can write the date. That way you can keep track of when you made this badge, kind of shows you your progress. And then you can add a bunch of fun little stickers or whatever. You can also leave it blank, depends on what you want to do. Some clients will ask to have their information, so they'll want their QR code shown. That way, while they're out suiting or anything, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, you can find me here," just to make it easier for socialization and whatnot. And then, why use cardstock over normal paper? Cardstock is a lot thicker. It'll stop it from just flopping. It makes it a little bit stronger, so you're not able to bend it so much. So that's one of the better reasons to use cardstock over just copy paper. Same with mixed media paper over just regular printer paper. The goal is to make your badge as strong as possible. That way it's not just flimsy and folding anytime someone bends over or whatnot. So laminating the badge is one of the scariest parts, at least in my opinion. Depending on how this goes, you can make or break your badge. A lot of things can go wrong, but for the most part, it'll go pretty smoothly. The best way I've found to get badges to go well is to plug in your laminator and let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. Even if that little button on top says that it's ready, I would let it keep going, just because sometimes they say they're fully heated, but it's not evenly heated throughout the entire rolling bar that makes it work. And that will give you uneven lamination, which ultimately does not look good. When you go to put your badge into the lamination sheets, you will want it to be towards the bottom of the sheet. That way there's not too much room, so don't just plop it right in the center. You'll keep it near the edge. This will prevent extra curling as it's going through. And then as you're lining it up into the laminator, you're going to want to put it in as straight as you can. If it goes in at an angle, that will cause your edges to fold over onto themselves, and that can be quite a headache to cut out. But then, once your badge has gone through and it's looking a-okay, you're gonna let it cool down. Don't burn your fingers like I have before. Let it cool down, and then you go around cutting with a nice little edge. You don't want to go right up to the badge where the paper is, because especially depending on your laminator, it will cause a little hole, it'll open up, and then that seal won't be there. Sometimes you can see like a very faint seal. That's where like the last of the air is inside of it. So I always try to give like at least like a fingernail length of like just sealant, just to keep it safe. And then once you're all cut out, you're gonna clip wherever you want it to hang, however you want it to hang. Just hold it with your fingers and then give it a punch wherever it looks ready. You're gonna put on your clip and you're good to go. But there are a few things that can go wrong with lamination. This includes edges curling. I had this happen with my tiger friend here. This edge entirely curled over on itself, and when I cut it, I had to cut around that bend. So once I had it cut to a nice length, as usable as I could, I sent it back through the laminator, and as it was heating, it ironed out that little curl again. And now you can't really tell, which is very exciting. So this is what I consider a sellable badge, even with the minor flaw. Other things, I've only had this happen once, maybe twice with badges. They can accordion. Depending on how you put it in your laminator, if it goes under the bar, I'm not sure how it happens, it just does. It won't flow through your laminator. It will catch on the bars, and all of it will be sucked in, making an accordion badge. This is one of the scariest things, which is why I'm scared to laminate every time. But it doesn't happen too often, so you're safe. But if that ever happens, you're going to pull it out. If it's fully laminated, then you're going to try one of our next steps, which is technically under badge care and maintenance, but it also applies for accordion badges if it ever happens. So if you ever are out and your badge folds or whatnot, you can fix it. You can get those folds back out. And to do that, you're going to need wax paper and an iron. Also a heat safe counter. But you're going to put the badge inside a folded piece of paper. Make sure to take the clip off, otherwise it's going to stick forever. And then you'll iron it back flat on a medium heat. If you've ever done perler beads, melty beads before, it's pretty much the same exact way to do it. And then definitely let it rest before you go running around. Additional tips and tricks for badges, making them as nice as possible. You're gonna want to double check before you send your badge through the laminator that very first time that there is no dander, fur, or like any little crumbs of anything in there. If you have little like crumbs or dog fur, your customers will see that, you'll see it, and depending on what it is, it can cause issues with the badge later on. It will cause a little air bubble, whatnot, not fun. When you're cutting out your badge around the laminate, no matter what style you're using, you're gonna want to make it smooth. That way you and your customers are not getting paper cuts while either just holding the badge or like out running around. Cutting it smooth also prevents those little tears in the laminate, which is why like sometimes your badge will tear and fall. And then when you're going over the top, wherever you want to add your little clip attachment, you're going to want to make sure you have at least like 2 millimeters of space before the clip, otherwise it will fall and rip very easily, just to give it that sturdy base. So when you're doing your hole punch, you're going to want to make sure to only punch through the laminate. If you punch through where the paper is, this will allow another space for air or moisture to get inside the badge. And then if your badge ever falls in a puddle or whatnot, it could pick up that badge or that water, and then it'll stay in there. It will mold, and it's just not fun. You'll end up having to throw your badge away. Sometimes if you punch the wrong spot, the air will all seep in there, and you have a giant like inflatable pocket of air, and it will kind of ruin the badge. So always try to just cut hole punch on the laminate. When you're ironing, I would highly recommend doing it with the badge face side up, as the bottom of the badge or the laminator is typically the hottest part. So keeping it face up will avoid any discolorations, because depending on what materials you're using, the heat can adjust the colorings. This primarily happens with acrylic or alcoholic markers, and occasionally with crayons, if you ever use those for badges. Very fun, by the way. Please note that my tutorial is just how I make badges. There are a million other ways to make badges, and there's no wrong way to do it. If a heated laminator is not something you're able to do, or if you're just getting started and don't want to commit, they can be expensive. Scotch lamination and tape also has self-sealing laminate pouches. It's kind of like a giant clear sticker. You're going to put your badge in, peel that sticky sheet off, and then smooth it nice and smooth. These pouches are more likely to give you air bubbles, but it's a great way to start out. And then there is another method called the tape method, where you'll put a couple strips of tape down, you'll put your badge into it, try and get all the air bubbles out, and then you'll do more tape over crossed. It's not the strongest or sturdiest method, but it is an option if you're ever in a pinch, you're out of laminate sheets, and you just need to get it done. It can work. Problems with this one is it'll be sticky, it'll peel, it always seems to get moisture or whatnot in there. It's just not the most secure, but it is an option. And then there are other types of badges than just the digital and traditional. You can do acrylic badges, where you're designing your badge online digitally, and then you send it to a manufacturer where they will print it the same way acrylic keychains are made, except you'll get it larger and it'll come through as your badge. Those ones typically come through double-sided, so when you're doing your file, you can flip it and then get your name to go the correct way, unless you want it backwards. That's an option too. There are also some like 3D paper badges where they will layer all the different colored sheets together, and it creates the wonderful illusion of like a 3D badge. There are perler beads. You've seen them out in Art Jam. You can make some here while you're here, actually, and then you just iron them off and flare, or you can make them at home. You'll just get some of the larger pegboards, and they're actually really fun to make. The hardest part is finding your specific colors. And then one of the currently most popular alternates for standard badges are the LED badges. These, they'll do the standard line art in white. It'll come acrylic, and then it'll have a little electronic feature that'll make it glow and change colors. Very fancy. I haven't figured out how to do it yet. And then that is the majority of what all I have to say. Does anyone have any questions to start?
I like to use charcoal. If I were to make a charcoal badge, what would be the best way to make, basically laminate it?
Yeah, so if you're doing a charcoal medium, you'll want to use a nice thicker type drawing paper, either mixed media or maybe even an acrylic paint. Or you can just use whatever works best for you, and you'll just want to make sure to get one of the more heavy-duty cardstocks to keep it nice and sturdy. You'll follow pretty much the basics of this tutorial, and then you just laminate it as usual. I would definitely recommend sealing it with a spray before putting it in the laminate, just to stop, because sometimes they'll like move around inside, and it will smear and look weird.
Charcoal smears.
Mm-hmm. Yes?
What do you recommend for size? Like if you're gonna do a digital badge or tape with permission from an artist, a piece they've done, and make that into your badge?
Yeah.
What would be a good size because I know like one I recently did, file when I was looking at it printed like it said it was one size, but then when it actually printed, it didn't quite line up.
Yeah, so printing is another thing I can go over, but when it comes to sizing of badges, it is most common to do a nice little, I think this is like a 7x5-ish.
Oh.
That's just the basic size. It kind of fits in your pocket. It's not taking up your entire space. This is what I would call a medium badge. There are smaller badges, which can be like 3x3s. I've seen badges go up to about like 1.5 feet by like a foot wide. I don't know where they're finding that big of a laminator, but they're doing it. Good for them. Yes. I agree. But you can find anything smaller or bigger, depending on what. When it comes to printing your digital stuff, I would always recommend setting your canvas on your drawing program to be the same size as a copy piece of paper would be. So an 11.5 by an 8.5 inch canvas, and then size your badge accordingly. And then when you're done, you'll upload it same as usual, PNG file, avoid JPEGs. And then when you're going to print, you want to make sure that it's not print this page. You want it to be just as is. Otherwise, it will shrink it a little bit, and if you're wanting that exact size, that's not quite what you're going for. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right. What can I?
How do you sell your badges? Like, what process would you take to like advertise yourself?
Yeah, so building up a business with badges can be very tricky. It's a very populated medium. The best way, I started out by doing a lot of badge trades. This got my product out and in the public eye, and I was able to get reviews from other people I've traded with. And from there, if you are feeling confident enough in your work, or even just want to try it out, I would sign up for an artist alley, and then you can have a couple displays, either draw your own characters or get a couple trades going, have that be your little displays, and then you can take commissions from there. You can have them be finished at con if you're quick enough, or you can just take commissions to be finished after the convention and sent to them later. When it comes to online badge selling, there's a million different ways you can do it. What I've found to be best is posting through your main social medias, and then also having a website like Ko-fi or Etsy. This way people can find it kind of on their own, and it's a little bit easier sometimes if they don't have to message you directly, if they're a little bit shyer. And then if you have any questions about their product, or if they forget to send you the reference sheet, you can still message them. If you're taking commissions for badges through DMs, you always want to make sure to get the basic info. You want at least a 2-view ref sheet. You want the character's name, and then any specific details on if they want an expression or like just specifics to their commission.
On that note, how much do you charge? How much do you charge?
So pricing badges can be very tricky. I always have to tell others, price what you think you're worth and add $10 on top of that. Because I continuously undercharge myself because I want to provide more of an affordable type product than making sure that I'm making all the bank. Plus that can also help you make a competitive wage versus just, well, it's expensive because I need to pay rent. So if you're starting out, I would start with a little bit lower pricing than what you think it's worth, maybe $5 less, but not severely underpricing yourself.
So like, how much do you charge?
So for a badge this size, these are my digital badges. These start at about $25. This is about a 5x7, so $25. Depending on what size you're doing, how much materials it's taking up, you want to make sure to price accordingly. So I do offer extra large badges, which are 9 by 9 inches big, very big. Especially when I'm doing them traditionally, they take up a lot of ink. So I make sure that those ones are $75 each. So you just price accordingly to your sizing and material use. Any other questions? Oh.
What's the best way to make sure you are doing smooth cuts and not doing horrible
Yeah,
judging?
so smooth cuts can definitely be tricky. If you're ever worried about it, I would like take a sticker or something that you're not the biggest fan of, stick it to your paper or just tape it, and just do some practices. Cutting as much paper as you can will really help make sure that you're getting that steady hand. It does take quite a while to get to, but you'll be able to do it with a bit of practice. And warming up is always a great way to start with cutting. Any other questions?
You were saying when punching the hole to like connect in the lanyard, not to go through the paper. If you designed the badge itself with a hole in it that you could punch through, would that work?
Yeah, that's fine, as long as there's enough room between the laminate so that you're not going in between that seal that's keeping the air tight, then you're all good.
You said that was like 2 millimeters.
Yeah, roughly. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was wondering if you had any input on like for the double-sided badges, maybe like they spin around. Earlier you mentioned always sign your artwork. What would be like an unobtrusive way to do so if the character is supposed to be like the main focus on both sides?
Yeah, so if it's a double-sided badge, you're going to want to make sure to sign your work probably at the bottom, just in a smaller font, or just like hide it like within the ear or something, somewhere where it's right there. You can find it, but it's not entirely obvious. Mm-hmm. Any last questions?
Just kind of following what was asked earlier, when cutting out the laminate, like, what's your strategy of doing the inner corners? Because I can do the wider parts smooth, but like the inner parts
So
are...
cutting the inner corners of the laminate. Those can definitely be tricky. With those, I really recommend slowing down, taking your time. Definitely take breaks. Don't let your eyes cross. That's how I've clipped a couple badges wide open. So especially because it's translucent, it can be a little bit harder to see. You're going to want to hold it at just that right angle where both of your eyes can see it without it blurring, and then just go in with the smallest pair of scissors you have. So if you have like a kitty cut scissor type thing, you'll want to use those for like little detailing spots.
Have you tried X-Acto knives before?
So I've used X-Acto knives a couple of times, but I'm not the most like experienced with them. My hand-eye coordination doesn't quite work that way, but it is an option. I've seen quite a lot of other badge artists perform quite well with it, and it is something you could do if that's better for you. Alrighty. Any last questions before I let you all go? Alright. Thank you all so much for coming to my Year 2 badge panel. I appreciate the support very much, and please feel free to grab one of my business cards to keep in touch or ask me any further questions if you think of them. Have a great rest of your conference. Yes, you can take your vote. Sure. Keep it going.